In the grand, violent theater of the American Mafia, some names echo like gunshots in a quiet street. Capone, Luciano, Gotti, these are the men whose legends were printed in bold headlines and immortalized on the silver screen. But before them, there was another. A man whose name is often whispered, a foundational figure shrouded in the mists of the early 20th century. His name was Salvatore D'Aquila. He was not merely a boss, he was the original blueprint for the ultimate authority in the American underworld. They called him the capo di tutti I capi, the boss of all bosses. This was a title he craved, a title he earned, and a title that would ultimately sign his death warrant. His story is not just about one man's rise and fall. It is the story of how the very structure of organized crime in America was born. His era was a time of transition. The old world of Sicilian honor and vendetta was crashing headlong into the new world of American ambition and commerce. D'Aquila stood at the crossroads of this collision. He was a man of tradition, yet he was also a pioneer of a new, more organized form of criminality. He understood that true power wasn't just about muscle or intimidation, it was about control over territory, control over rackets, and most importantly, control over other powerful men. His vision was to create a unified network, a criminal kingdom with himself as the undisputed king. This ambition set a dangerous precedent, igniting a hunger for absolute power that would define the Mafia for generations to come. To understand D'Aquila, you must understand the world that made him. It was a world of poverty and prejudice, where Italian immigrants were often denied a legitimate path to the American dream. They arrived in a land that promised everything but often delivered very little. For men like D'Aquila, the established laws and societal norms were not a source of protection, but a barrier. So they created their own laws. They built their own society in the shadows of the one that had rejected them. This shadow society had its own rules, its own hierarchy, and its own brutal form of justice. Salvatore D'Aquila did not just join this world, he sought to master it, to bend it to his will. His journey is a chilling lesson in power. It teaches us that in the world of organized crime, the ascent is always perilous, and the view from the top is never secure. Every ally is a potential rival, and every handshake can conceal a dagger. D'Aquila's life was a constant, deadly chess match played on the grimy streets of New York. He moved his pieces with caution and cunning, eliminating threats and consolidating his influence. But in this game, there is no checkmate that lasts forever. The very title he fought so hard to claim, the boss of all bosses, became a target on his back, a shining prize for the next ambitious man waiting in the wings to take his shot at the king. Salvatore D'Aquila was born in 1873 in Palermo, Sicily. This was the cradle of the Mafia, an island where secret societies had flourished for centuries. They were born from a deep distrust of the state and a fierce code of self-reliance. In Palermo, a man's honor, his onorata, was his most valuable possession. Disputes were not settled in courtrooms but in back alleys, with words of warning or the sharp edge of a blade. D'Aquila was a product of this environment. He absorbed its lessons from a young age. He learned that respect was earned through fear, and that loyalty was a currency more valuable than gold. He was steeped in the traditions of the Cosa Nostra, the our thing, long before he ever set foot on American soil. In 1906, D'Aquila made the fateful journey across the Atlantic. He arrived in New York City, a sprawling, chaotic metropolis teeming with millions of other hopeful immigrants. He was just one face in a sea of many, settling in East Harlem, which was fast becoming a bustling Italian enclave. But D'Aquila was not like the others who came seeking honest work in factories or on construction sites. He carried with him the seeds of the Sicilian underworld. He saw the burgeoning Italian communities not just as a place to live, but as a fertile ground for recruitment and a territory to be controlled. He came to America not to build a new life but to build a new empire based on the old ways. He did not waste time. D'Aquila quickly connected with other ambitious men from the old country, men who shared his understanding of power and his disdain for American law. He began as an enforcer and a captain within the Morello crime family, the dominant Italian-American criminal organization in New York at the time. This was his apprenticeship. He watched, he learned, he saw the strengths and more importantly the weaknesses of the men in charge. He observed how they ran their rackets, how they settled disputes, and how they dealt with rivals. He was a patient student of crime, biding his time and building a network of loyal followers who were drawn to his quiet confidence and ruthless efficiency. His ambition soon outgrew his position. The Morello family was powerful, but D'Aquila saw its internal divisions and vulnerabilities. The family's leadership was in constant turmoil, with bosses being jailed or killed. This chaos was D'Aquila's opportunity. Around 1910 he broke away, taking a significant faction of loyalists with him. He didn't just leave, he established a rival power base in Brooklyn, directly challenging the Morello gang's supremacy. This was a bold and dangerous move. It was a declaration of war. Salvatore D'Aquila was no longer a soldier. He was now a general, ready to carve out his own kingdom in the concrete jungle of New York. The D'Aquila crime family was not born in a boardroom, it was forged in the shadows of Brooklyn. After splitting from the Morellos, Salvatore D'Aquila began to systematically build his organization. He recruited skilled and ruthless men, many of whom he knew from Sicily. He established a clear hierarchy, with himself at the very top. He was the patriarch, the undisputed leader whose word was law. Below him were his trusted lieutenants, his caparagimes, each responsible for a crew of soldiers. This structure provided both efficiency and insulation. Orders would flow down from D'Aquila, but he remained distanced from the day-to-day criminal acts, making it difficult for law enforcement to connect him directly to any crime. His family's influence spread like a stain across the borough. They specialized in the rackets that preyed on their fellow immigrants. Protection, or what came to be known as the Black Hand, was their bread and butter. Shopkeepers and businessmen would receive a letter demanding money, marked with a sinister black handprint. To refuse was to invite violence, a broken window, a fire, or worse. D'Aquila also controlled the docks, extorting shipping companies and controlling the unions. He had a hand in gambling, loan sharking, and the distribution of olive oil and cheese, legitimate businesses that served as fronts for his illicit activities. His organization was becoming a shadow government, providing services and enforcing contracts where the real government could not or would not. What set D'Aquila apart was his understanding of national, not just local power. While other bosses were content to rule their own neighborhoods, D'Aquila had a grander vision. He began to forge alliances with other Sicilian gang leaders across the country, from Cleveland to Chicago to New Orleans. He acted as a mediator, a judge in disputes between families. He understood that infighting weakened the collective power of the Mafia. By positioning himself as a national arbiter, he was subtly building the foundation for something much bigger. He was creating the network that he would one day seek to rule as the ultimate authority, the boss of all bosses. The family he built was bound by more than just crime. It was bound by a strict code of conduct imported directly from Sicily. The Code of Omerta, the vow of silence, was absolute. To cooperate with the authorities was the ultimate betrayal, punishable by death. Loyalty to the family came before loyalty to God or country. This code created a closed, impenetrable world. It made the D'Aquila family incredibly difficult for outsiders, especially law enforcement, to understand, let alone infiltrate. This secret society, with its ancient traditions and brutal enforcement, became the most powerful criminal enterprise of its time, all under the firm and steady hand of its founder, Salvatore D'Aquila. Salvatore D'Aquila's criminal empire was a complex and sprawling enterprise, a web with threads reaching into nearly every aspect of life in Italian-American neighborhoods. At the heart of his operation was extortion. His men were masters of intimidation, preying on the fears of hard-working immigrants who were often too scared of the authorities to seek help. A small business owner, perhaps a baker or a butcher, would find his livelihood threatened by D'Aquila's soldiers. The demand was simple: pay a weekly tribute for protection. This was not protection from outside threats, but protection from D'Aquila's own men. It was a vicious cycle of fear and payment that filled the family's coffers and solidified their control over the community. Beyond simple extortion, D'Aquila was a pioneer in labor racketeering. He saw the immense power latent in the unions that were forming on the Brooklyn waterfront. By infiltrating and controlling these unions, he could dictate who worked and who didn't. He controlled the loading and unloading of cargo, allowing him to pilfer valuable goods from shipments with impunity. This control also gave him immense leverage over shipping companies who had to pay him off to avoid costly strikes and slowdowns. The docks became his personal fiefdom, a vital artery of commerce that pumped money and power directly into his organization. He was not just a gangster, he was a corrupt and powerful labor baron. The advent of Prohibition in 1920 was a gift from heaven for a man like D'Aquila. Suddenly, an entire nation was thirsty, and the law forbade the manufacture and sale of alcohol. This created a black market of unprecedented scale, and D'Aquila jumped in with both feet. He organized large-scale bootlegging operations, smuggling liquor from Canada and the Caribbean. He ran fleets of trucks and bribed countless police officers and federal agents to look the other way. The profits were astronomical, dwarfing anything he had made from his previous rackets. This new river of gold funded a massive expansion of his empire, allowing him to buy more influence, more weapons, and more loyalty. D'Aquila also ran more traditional rackets, like illegal gambling and loan sharking. His organization operated countless backroom card games and numbers rackets, draining money from the local populace. For those who fell into debt, his loan sharks were waiting. They offered quick cash at exorbitant interest rates. A borrower who failed to pay on time would face a brutal lesson in financial responsibility, often delivered with a baseball bat or a broken bottle. Through this combination of extortion, labor control, bootlegging, and loan sharking, D'Aquila built a diversified criminal portfolio that made him one of the wealthiest and most feared men in the American underworld. For a man who ran such a vast criminal network, Salvatore D'Aquila's official police record was remarkably thin. This was not a coincidence. It was a testament to his cunning and the effectiveness of his organization's code of silence. D'Aquila was a master at insulating himself from the crimes committed on his behalf. He rarely gave orders directly to the low-level soldiers who carried out the dirty work. Instead, messages were passed down through his trusted lieutenants, creating layers of separation that made it nearly impossible for prosecutors to trace a crime back to the man at the top. He was the unseen hand, the ghost in the machine, and his fingerprints were never on the weapon. His most notable brush with the law came not from his major rackets, but from a seemingly minor offense. In the early days, before his empire was fully established, he faced charges related to counterfeiting. He was allegedly involved in a scheme to print and distribute fake currency. While the charges were serious, the evidence was circumstantial, and key witnesses were either too intimidated to testify or suddenly developed selective amnesia on the stand. Ultimately, D'Aquila was able to beat the rap. This experience taught him a valuable lesson. The American legal system could be manipulated. It could be defeated by fear, bribery, and the unwavering silence of his men. Throughout his reign, D'Aquila was the subject of intense police surveillance. Detectives followed him, federal agents tapped his phones, yet they could never build a solid case against him for the major crimes everyone knew he was committing. He lived a life of calculated caution. His public persona was that of a respectable businessman and importer of Italian goods. He contributed to local charities and attended church. This respectable facade was a deliberate strategy designed to deflect suspicion and create a narrative of legitimacy. He moved quietly, avoided ostentatious displays of wealth, and conducted his most important business in secret, far from prying eyes and ears. His ability to evade conviction became part of his legend. It enhanced his aura of invincibility among his followers and rivals. It seemed as though he was untouchable, protected by a combination of Sicilian cunning and a powerful code of silence. While lesser mobsters were frequently arrested and jailed, D'Aquila remained free, ruling his empire from the shadows. This lack of a significant criminal record is, ironically, the greatest proof of his power and influence. It demonstrated a level of control and discipline that few other bosses could ever hope to achieve, solidifying his status as a man who operated above the law.